No babysitter lasted with the Billionaire's wild twins. Everyone quit, cried, or fled before the week was over. And now, in the marble foyer of the Westbridge Tower penthouse, the maid's daughter stood holding nothing but a $5 notebook she had bought at a discount store. It looked painfully out of place among gold fixtures and polished stone. Behind the closed doors, the twins were already shouting, already throwing things, already daring the world to try again. She tightened her fingers around the cheap notebook. She wasn't supposed to be here. And in the next few minutes, something would happen that no one in that penthouse expected. Elena Martinez grew up in a two-bedroom apartment on the south edge of Chicago, where the walls were thin, the buses were loud, and every dollar had a destination before it even existed. Her mother, Rosa, worked as a live-in maid for the Westbridge family during the week and came home only on weekends. Elena learned early that dignity was not about money. It was about how you spoke to people, how you carried yourself, how you treated things you could barely afford. She spent afternoons doing homework at the public library, using free Wi-Fi to help her mother translate medical bills or update documents. She never complained about what she lacked. Her quiet rule, the one she repeated inside her head on the hard days, was simple. We stand steady. It was the only way to survive a life that kept shifting beneath her feet. Despite everything, Elena believed in order, in calm, in fixing what was broken even when it wasn't her responsibility. That belief is what made her help her mother fold uniforms late at night, or clean apartment hallways when the landlord ignored complaints, or tutor younger kids for a few dollars. She didn't chase attention, she chased stability. She had heard stories about the Westbridges, how their penthouse stretched wider than her entire apartment floor, how money moved around them like air, how their world was unreachable. She never imagined stepping into it. Her mother had always drawn a line. I clean, but you stay focused on school. But that week, everything changed. A sudden bill, a lost shift, a need that couldn't wait for dignity or pride. And as Elena packed her worn backpack and got ready to follow her mother into a world built on polished surfaces and unspoken rules, she felt something tightening quietly in her chest, something warning her that stepping across that threshold would not be as simple as helping out for a day. A door was about to open, and once it opened, nothing in her life would fit the same way again. The opportunity appeared on a Thursday evening, slipped into conversation as if it were something ordinary. Rosa came home with tired eyes and a stiff back, but there was urgency beneath her voice when she told Elena that the Westbridges were desperate. Another babysitter had quit, this one lasting less than 6 hours. The twins had a reputation that echoed through every agency in the city, and the family was running out of options. They just need someone for a few days, Rosa said, rubbing her temples, until the new staff arrives next week. They'll pay well, more than I make in 2 days. That number hovered in the room. A number big enough to cover the overdue utility bill, big enough to keep the lights from being shut off, big enough to solve the problem that had been shadowing them all month. Elena hesitated, feeling the weight of every warning she had ever heard about that household. She had seen glimpses when dropping off her mother, cold hallways, strict schedules, staff who never looked comfortable. The thought of watching the infamous twins sent a knot straight into her stomach. But need had a way of shrinking fear. Rosa tried to hide her worry. You don't have to say yes. I told them no at first, but they insisted. They said they'd double the rate if you could start tomorrow. Double. A word that tasted like relief and risk at the same time. Elena imagined what a few days of work could fix. She imagined her mother not having to choose which bill to delay again. She imagined breathing room, anything at all. So she agreed. And 24 hours later, Elena found herself standing in front of Westbridge Tower, a building so tall it seemed to swallow the gray Chicago sky. And as she stepped through the private lobby and the elevator doors slid shut around her, she held on to one fragile hope. Maybe it would only be chaos. Maybe chaos she could manage. But the elevator was rising fast, and something else, something unspoken, waited behind those penthouse doors. The first hour went better than Elena expected. The twins, Oliver and Evan, 8 years old with matching smirks,
tested her patience with sharp questions and scattered toys, but she stayed steady. She guided them through a puzzle, set boundaries, and didn't flinch when they tossed a cushion at each other. For a moment, she believed she could handle this. That belief lasted until the guests arrived. She hadn't known the Westbridges were hosting a midday meeting, part business, part social. Wealthy parents gathered in the grand room while their children trailed behind them. It was the kind of gathering where staff stayed invisible and mistakes were magnified. Elena escorted the twins downstairs, trying to keep them from barging into conversations. But Oliver spotted a group of boys near the refreshment table. Expensive sneakers, designer sweatshirts, and the kind of confidence that came from being told yes more than no. He ran over, Evan followed. Elena kept a few steps behind, careful not to hover. One of the boys glanced at her, then whispered loudly, "Is she the new nanny? They always look so lost." The others laughed. Elena pretended she didn't hear, focusing on keeping the twins close. But the real humiliation hit moments later. Oliver reached for a plate of pastries, knocking over a glass tower of sparkling water. It crashed against the marble floor, sending shards everywhere. A sharp gasp spread through the room. Conversation stopped. Heads turned. Before Elena could react, Evan pointed straight at her. She told Oliver to grab it. Elena froze. She had done no such thing, but in a room filled with assumptions, truth was already losing the race. A woman with a fur-lined coat stepped forward. "Your mother works here, doesn't she?" Her tone held the kind of polite disdain that stings worse than shouting. "I suppose accidents happen when help brings their family into professional spaces." Another parent murmured, "This is why they need proper staff." He rushed up her neck. She bent to clean the glass, hand steady but breath uneven. Every whisper felt like a verdict, and above her, the twins watched with identical, satisfied grins. Boys who had learned that blame was easier than honesty. She wanted to stand, to defend herself, but any word she said might cost her mother's job. So she kept gathering the shards, feeling each crack of broken glass echo inside her. Then she heard a voice, low, irritated, and close. What exactly happened here? The room shifted. Someone new had seen everything, and their reaction would change the course of the entire day. The voice belonged to Nathan Westbridge, 17 years old, tall, composed in a way only the children of empires ever seemed to be. He had the same sharp jawline as his father, the same quiet authority, but his expression was different. It carried annoyance, yes, but also something else, recognition of unfairness. He stepped closer, eyes moving from the shattered glass to Oliver and Evan, then down to Elena kneeling on the floor. She could feel him studying the situation, not the gossip. The room waited, hanging on his reaction. Oliver jumped in first. "She told me to take one and everything fell." Nathan arched a brow. "You expect me to believe that?" His tone was calm, almost bored, but it cut straight through the chaos. Parents shifted uncomfortably. No one had expected him to contradict the twins so openly. Alana kept her gaze low, afraid that meeting his eyes might make her look defensive. She continued gathering the shards with trembling fingers. But Nathan noticed the small tremor. He noticed the smear of strawberry glaze on her sleeve, evidence of how close she'd been trying to keep the twins. He noticed the twins' posture, guilty beneath their practiced innocence. One of the boys from earlier whispered, "Is he siding with the maid's kid?" But Nathan wasn't siding, he was observing. His eyes narrowed at the adults more than the children. He reached for a pair of cleanup gloves from a nearby drawer and crouched beside Elena. "You're going to cut yourself," he said quietly. The simple sentence drew a ripple of surprise across the room. Billionaire heirs were not expected to kneel beside staff, much less help them clean up a mess made by their own family. Elena's voice was barely above a breath. "I'm fine." Nathan's gaze flicked upward, catching Oliver and Evan whispering behind their hands. He shook his head once, disappointed, not angry, and the twins instantly fell silent. The power of that single look didn't come from age, it came from truth. He already knew who had caused the chaos. Then he stood and addressed the group. Tone flat, but unmistakably firm. "The tower staff will handle the cleanup. The boys were running, as usual. No one else was responsible." A soft gasp traveled through the parents. His statement didn't accuse, but it dismantled their assumptions in seconds. Elena felt the weight lift from her shoulders, but only slightly. Being defended in such a public way carried its own kind of danger. Nathan noticed her discomfort. For the first time, he truly looked at her, not as staff, not as the maid's daughter, but as someone trapped in a situation she didn't choose. And though he said nothing more, the quiet in his eyes made a silent promise. This would not be ignored. But everyone else in the room also saw something shift. Lines being crossed, expectations being broken. And someone was already preparing to challenge it. The tension in the room hardened when Victoria Westbridge, the twins' mother, stepped forward. Always composed, always immaculate, she looked at the scattered glass, then at Nathan, then at Elena with a tight, assessing stare. Conversations around them softened to murmurs. Everyone sensed a shift coming. "Nathan," she said, her voice smooth but edged, "this is a professional gathering. We do not correct family matters in public." Nathan didn't flinch. Then maybe the boys shouldn't lie in public. A stir rippled through the guests. No one spoke to Victoria that way, not even her husband. Elena braced herself, feeling suddenly responsible for a conflict she never wanted. Victoria turned to Elena, expression unreadable. "You may step aside. We'll handle the children." But the twins were already tugging at her sleeve, eager to escape punishment. Oliver whispered loudly, "She dropped it, Mom. It's her fault." Elena inhaled, steadying herself, unsure whether to defend her name or stay silent for her mother's sake. And then Nathan intervened fully. "Stop lying," he said, turning to the boys. "I was watching from the stairs. You knocked it over. She was trying to help." The room froze. This wasn't gentle correction. This was a direct, public stance that redrew the boundaries no one else dared touch. Victoria's jaw tightened. "Nathan, that is enough." He stepped forward anyway, placing himself subtly between Elena and the circle of judging adults. "The least we can do," he said evenly, "is treat people with respect, especially those cleaning up after us." Whispers swelled again, some approving, some scandalized. But for the first time since the accident, Elena felt air returning to her lungs. A staff member hurried in to take over the cleanup, guided by Nathan's gesture. He didn't move until Elena was safely out of the crowd's scrutiny. The moment should have ended there, but Victoria's narrowed eyes made one thing very clear. This intervention had consequences, and the night wasn't done with them. Victoria didn't wait for the guests to disperse. The moment the hallway cleared enough, she motioned sharply for Nathan to follow her into the private sitting room. Elena moved to slip away, but Victoria's voice stopped her. "You as well." Elena's breath caught. She stepped inside, keeping close to the wall. The door clicked shut behind them, silencing the noise from the gathering. The room felt colder than the rest of the penthouse. White, controlled, expensive in a way meant to intimidate. Victoria folded her arms. "Nathan, I will not have you undermining my authority in front of guests." He answered calmly, "I wasn't undermining you. I was correcting a lie." Victoria's gaze shifted to Elena, cool as glass. "And you should have known better than to allow the boys near that display. This is not your environment. You are here as a favor, nothing more." Elena swallowed hard. "I didn't." Nathan cut in. "Mom, she didn't do anything wrong. The twins pushed past her. You know how they get when they are not properly supervised." Victoria interrupted, stepping closer. "This is exactly why household rules exist. Children of staff do not mix with guests." The words landed with deliberate precision. Elena felt the sting, but she kept her voice steady. "I was trying to protect them from making a scene." Victoria raised a brow. "And yet, here we are." Nathan exhaled sharply. "So, it's her fault for being in the room, even when your sons caused the mess?" For the first time, a crack appeared in Victoria's composure. Her voice dropped lower, controlled but colder. "Nathan, you don't understand the consequences of disrespecting structure. Appearances matter. Order matters. If we allow boundary lines to blur, we lose control." "That sounds more like power than order." "It is the same thing in this house." The silence stretched. Elena sensed the roots of something deeper, an old conflict resurfacing through her presence. Victoria finally turned to Elena. "After today, your services will no longer be required." Elena nodded, heart sinking. But Nathan's voice cut in again. "No," he said quietly. "We're not done." And with that, the room's balance shifted again, leaving all three standing in the tension of a line that had just been crossed. Victoria swept out of the room, leaving the door open just wide enough for her exit to feel deliberate, like a warning left in plain sight. Elena stood frozen for a moment, unsure whether she should follow, apologize, or disappear entirely. Nathan remained still too, but his jaw was tight, eyes focused on the floor as though replaying everything that had just happened. When he finally looked up, the tension between them felt almost physical. "You didn't have to step in," Elena said quietly. Her voice carried a mix of gratitude and fear. "It only made things worse for you." Nathan shook his head. "They made things worse, not me." Elena hugged her arms around herself. "Your mother thinks I'm the problem. I don't want to risk your family treating mine differently. My mom needs this job." That made Nathan's expression shift. He seemed to register for the first time how much weight hung on her shoulders, weight that had nothing to do with spilled water or shattered glass. "Your mother is valued here. None of this changes that." "You don't know that," Elena whispered. "People like us, one misunderstanding can decide everything." He stepped back, almost stung. It wasn't anger, just the dawning awareness of something he'd never had to think about. Elena continued, voice steadying. "You're used to being heard. I'm used to staying quiet so I don't make trouble. We live by different rules." Nathan lowered his eyes. Maybe that's the problem. A silence settled between them, heavy but not hostile. Elena picked at the edge of her sleeve, the dried glaze still staining the fabric. The humiliation lingered in memories of whispers and stares, but the worst part was knowing she'd have to face her mother and explain everything. Nathan noticed the stain. "You should change. The laundry staff can help." Elena almost laughed, but the sound never came. "I'm leaving, remember?" He hesitated. "You don't have to. Not yet." She met his gaze then, really met it. There was no apology in his eyes, no pity, just sincerity, and that made her chest tighten in a way she didn't like. She didn't want gratitude to turn into obligation. "You got yourself into trouble trying to defend me. That wasn't fair to you." Nathan leaned back against the wall, exhaling slowly. and letting a lie stand wouldn't have been fair to you. Elena looked away. Truth doesn't matter here, not if it inconveniences the wrong people. It matters to me, he replied. The words were simple, but they shifted something between them, just enough for neither to walk away. Before Elena could respond, footsteps echoed down the hall. A staff member approached, telling Nathan his father wanted to see him and telling Elena the twins needed to be taken to the study for their afternoon lesson. Elena froze. I thought I was dismissed. The staff member looked confused. I was told to bring you back to them. Nathan blinked, realizing what it meant. My mother changed her mind. But Elena felt something else entirely. A door reopening, but not out of mercy. It felt like the start of a new test, one she wasn't sure she was ready for. Elena didn't understand why Victoria allowed her to stay until she reached the study. The twins sat at their oversized desks, arms crossed, faces set in stubborn matching pouts. The tutor, a thin man with worry lines etched deep, looked exhausted. They refuse to work unless you help, he said, rubbing his temples. They said you make things less boring. Elena blinked. That wasn't a compliment, it was leverage. The tutor stepped aside, grateful for the break, and Elena reluctantly took his place. She guided the boys through reading exercises, math sheets, science flashcards. To her surprise, they listened. Slowly, imperfectly, but they listened. Every small victory came with a glance toward the doorway, where Nathan appeared halfway through the session, leaning silently against the frame. He didn't interrupt, he just watched. After the lesson ended, the twins raced down the hall, leaving worksheets scattered in their wake. Elena moved to gather them, but Nathan stepped forward and helped without a word. They like you, he said, kneeling beside her to collect papers. They like control. I just get caught in the middle. Nathan gave a quiet, knowing half smile. Welcome to the family dynamic. Elena raised her eyebrow. Is this normal for you? Pretty much, he admitted. The twins test everyone. My mom expects perfection. My dad avoids conflict. And I, try to keep the house from falling apart. There it was. The first honest peek into his world. Not the polished version guests saw, but the pressure underneath. Elena set the papers on a table. So you're the one holding everything together.
Nathan didn't answer immediately. Someone has to, he said eventually. Something in his voice made her pause. For the first time, she realized she wasn't the only one living under a weight she'd never asked for. The tutor returned, surprised to see the worksheets completed. You two make a good team, he remarked, before hurrying off. Elena felt the words settled strangely. A team? With a Westbridge? Nathan glanced her way, expression thoughtful. Maybe the tutor was right. Maybe this forced partnership was becoming something neither of them expected. The evening quiet settled over the penthouse like a heavy blanket. The guests were gone. The twins were finally asleep. Elena waited near the service elevator, backpack slung over her shoulder, ready for her mother to finish her final tasks so they could go home. But Nathan appeared again, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. You're leaving? I've done enough damage for one day, she replied with a tired smile. Nathan hesitated, then motioned toward the balcony overlooking Chicago. Come here for a minute. I want to show you something. Elena nearly refused, but something in his voice wasn't commanding. It was honest. So she followed him. Outside, Chicago stretched wide beneath them, a grid of lights flickering in the early night. The wind carried the hum of traffic far below. For a few seconds, neither spoke. Then Nathan said quietly, People think living up here means everything is easy. Elena looked sideways at him. Isn't it? He shook his head. Money builds walls, not freedom. Every move we make is judged. Every mistake becomes gossip. Every weakness feels like a threat. He paused. My family likes to pretend perfection is protection, but it's just a cage with nicer windows.
Elena considered his words. "Where I come from, we don't get cages. We get engines." "Engines?" he repeated. She nodded. "We keep everything running. Buildings, businesses, families. People like us make the world move. And nobody notices unless something breaks." Nathan let out a slow breath, as if the idea hit harder than he expected. "So you're the engine, and I'm the cage." Elena shrugged. "Maybe. But cages aren't always chosen. Sometimes you're born into them." For the first time, Nathan didn't look like a Westbridge. He looked like a boy caught between expectations he never agreed to. Elena stepped back from the railing. "We both live inside systems we didn't design. That's the shared truth." "And maybe," Nathan said, meeting her eyes, "that's why today felt different." The moment settled between them. Unexpected, grounding, undeniable. Whatever came next, the line between their worlds had quietly shifted. The next afternoon brought another gathering, smaller than the day before, but still filled with polished voices and curated smiles. The Westbridges were hosting a check presentation for a local foundation, which meant staff lined the walls, guests filled the lounge, and the twins were expected to behave. Elena stayed in the background, keeping the boys busy with a quiet game while speeches began. She hoped to avoid attention entirely. But trouble had a way of finding her. When one of the guests, a man in an expensive charcoal suit, noticed her, he smirked. "Ah, the young lady from yesterday. I hear we had a mishap." His voice carried just enough volume for people nearby to hear. A few turned, curious. Elena froze. She didn't want another scene. Not today. Before she could respond, Oliver piped up, loud and clear. "It wasn't her fault!" Then, realizing eyes were on him, he faltered. The man chuckled. "Children always defend their nannies." Elena felt heat creep up her neck, until Nathan stepped forward from the opposite side of the room, his voice steady and unmistakably firm. "She isn't our nanny, and she isn't responsible for the accident." The chatter faded instantly. Victoria looked up sharply. "Nathan?" But he continued, addressing the small crowd now watching. "I saw what happened yesterday. The boys knocked it over. She tried to stop them." His tone held neither anger nor apology, only truth laid bare. And blaming someone with less power isn't acceptable, not in this home. Whispers surged through the room like a spark catching dry leaves. The man in the suit stiffened, clearly unused to being corrected. "Young man, I was only telling the wrong story. And stories matter." The twins exchanged wide-eyed glances, caught between guilt and relief. Victoria's posture stiffened, but this time she didn't interrupt. She couldn't. Too many eyes were on them. For the first time, the room wasn't judging Elena. It was judging them. And in that brief, suspended moment, the balance of the household shifted, just enough for truth to stand on equal ground. Elena exhaled slowly. For once, she wasn't defending herself. Someone else was carrying the weight. Elena waited near the foyer, where everything had begun. The marble floor gleamed, the gold fixtures shone, and the $5 notebook she'd carried on her first day rested in her hands again. But it didn't feel out of place now, not after everything that had happened. Rosa approached, worry softening into surprise when Nathan appeared beside Elena, holding two neatly folded worksheets the twins had completed, without bribery, without chaos. "He asked if she's coming back tomorrow," Nathan said quietly. "Is she?" Nathan looked at Elena, but there was no pressure in his eyes, only respect. "That's up to you."
Elena traced her thumb along the edge of the cheap notebook. Yesterday, it had marked her as someone who didn't belong. Today, it felt like a reminder that worth wasn't measured by marble floors or family names. "I'll come back," she said, "but only if things stay honest." Nathan nodded. Then it settled. As Elena and her mother stepped into the elevator, she glanced once more at the grand foyer, no longer a place that swallowed her, but a place where she had stood her ground. The doors closed softly, carrying her downward, and for the first time since entering the tower, she felt not small, but steady.
Sometimes the smallest moments, one lie corrected, one truth spoken, reshape entire worlds. Elena entered the West Bridge Tower expecting to be invisible, a temporary helper in a place that valued status more than sincerity. But dignity has a quiet way of holding its ground, even in rooms built on power. And sometimes, someone on the other side of the divide sees it too. If you're still here, thank you for listening to this story. If it made you feel something, if it reminded you that courage doesn't always look loud, or that respect can bridge even the widest gaps, consider liking the video, subscribing, or sharing it with someone who might need it today. Your presence here matters. Until the next story.